or or share with people who could not make it today. We'll start off today with just kind of like a temperature check on how the DSIG program, the Dreamer Service Incentive Grant Program, is kind of going on your school or campus. You can answer the question by going on menti.com and entering this code that we'll throw on the chat, or you can also use this QR code right here if you have your phone with you. And answers can really range from like, you know, I'm still kind of learning about this, still figuring it out. It's a work in progress in our campus, or it's a success in our campus, right? We have like X number of students benefiting, or we're growing the program. So anything like that. I believe you have 200 characters for the answer. But it could be a spectrum of answers like that. We'll give folks about 2 minutes to do that. Go to my screen. Okay, we have a couple of answers already. Yeah, so I see some folks are here to learn, right? Work in progress. It's a little confusing, not that many students participating. Given the scholarship's cost of attendance cap, we'll talk about that a little bit. People are still unaware of it. Okay, need to develop. We do have a few students participating, right? It starts with a couple of students, so that's also good to hear. Okay, 3 DSIG, 9 College Core. Good. We'll touch on College Core a little bit today. Need to learn more. Work in progress, trying to create new partnerships. Great. Wait for a couple more answers. About 10 people have answered. Lack of awareness and knowledge about it at my campus. Working on building it up, learning more. Great. We've only recently been able to onboard students. Our district previously asked for a SSN for volunteers. Okay, good context for that one. Maybe 1 more minute of responses. Okay, as folks are kind of putting their responses on the Mentimeter, I'm wondering if I can get a volunteer to maybe speak about something they wrote on the Mentimeter or something that they're noticing from the Mentimeter that they want to talk a little bit more about. You can just unmute yourself or put it in the chat. It seems like the general theme, right, is there are some challenges with DSIG as a relatively new program, right? I think that's expected too. People are still learning. Anybody want to share more?
I know for me personally, I have different groups coming to ask me questions about it because we have College Core, we have Trio, we have a lot of those on our community campus, our community college campus. But for me, I'm kind of in that like, don't really know much about it. Need to do research because I obviously don't want to give anyone wrong information, but I want to make sure it's there and implemented in a way that'll make it successful for our undocumented students so that they can benefit from this.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Millie, right? Or sorry, Milagros, right?
Yeah, I go by both.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, right? I think as we can see from the Mentimeter, this it's great to start from a place of learning, right? This is a perfect place to learn more. We have some great panelists to talk a little bit more about that. So thank you for sharing that with us too. Thankfully, there are a little bit more opportunities for undocumented students, that it's also nice to kind of like make sure that you have the right information for each of them. too. And then I see on the background, I'm sorry, on the chat, Selena mentioned confusion about background checks because some places that ask for volunteer do ask that of all their volunteers, similar to the SSN. So thank you for sharing that. Great. So yeah, so as we can see, right, there are some learning curves with DSIG, and that's why we're here today to kind of maybe help provide more of that information and hear just how some folks are navigating DSIG with in their campuses too. And so we'll kind of just start off with the overview, just to make sure we're all on the same page about DSIG. And DSIG is short for the Dreamer Service Incentive Grant. It essentially allows undocumented students to receive grants for performing volunteer service, regardless of work authorization, right? So it addresses that barrier of providing financial compensation and also professional development opportunities for students who don't have DACA. It is only open, as the name kind of implies, to California DREAM Act applicants with a Cal Grant B or a Cal Grant A with Cal Grant B eligibility. A little confusing, but it is open to those two pockets of students. And students do need to complete 150 hours per semester or 100 hours per quarter of community service, either at their campus or a qualifying service organization, which we'll go into a little bit more in the next slide. And they can get up to 4,500 per academic year for their time. I believe DSIG's only been around for about 2 to 3 years at this point, and it is available to 1,667 students for this academic year, which jumped up from the first year it was implemented. And some additional, oops, sorry, before I go on to it, actually, I do also want to share a really quickly touch about the other opportunity that somebody mentioned, the California College Corps. We don't have a slide for it, but we'll throw information about it in the chat. I believe for College Corps, students need to also qualify for DSIG, and it is only open to partner colleges, but it's similar in the way that it allows students professional development opportunities in certain topics, and they also receive a grant for doing their work for the academic year. We won't get too into it in this session, but just want to throw that out. I think we'll have a link in the chat where people can see if their school is a partner campus, and they are always looking for AB 540 students for that also. So that might be another topic for a future session. But going back to DSIG, some additional requirements listed here on this slide. Students do need to attend a qualifying institution to benefit, and qualifying just means the school receives a Cal Grant. So any of the community colleges, CSU, UC's, private colleges that issues out Cal Grants, that's a qualifying institution, and students do need to have unmet need in their financial aid package. There is a DSIG grant application that students need to complete in order to apply, and the community service they're performing has to be either related to their major or to serve a community need. So it can't be something like a fast food job, for example. There is a list of service organizations that CSAC provides of the places where students can volunteer, and those do include campuses, local nonprofits. So I'm really glad to actually hear about a lot of nonprofits who are here with us today, and any government entities. I think the only requirement is the organization has to have been around for about 2 years from the time the student signs up to volunteer for them. If an organization for any reason is not listed on that, it's very easy to get listed to be a qualifying service organization. They just have to complete this organization registration form. And there's a lot of links on this slide, so we won't throw all of them in the chat, but we'll be sharing this slide with folks afterwards. And then in order to receive payment, right, there's a separate payment request form that students have to fill out after completing their service hours. And just a note, with the updated California DREAM Act, there is actually now a question around DSIG, so students can opt in to get information about DSIG. So hopefully that does increase awareness a little bit more about the program. But around the application and payment request forms, there are different sections within those different forms that students need to complete, and also requires other departments, organizations to complete. So there is a student demographics section, the financial aid office of the school the student is attending also has a portion to fill out, and there's also a portion for the service organization where the student's doing the hours to fill out, and also a student agreement portion as well. And once students are accepted into the program, they are notified. They do have to document their service hours. There's a tracker that CSAC provides on their website, or if the service organization has their own, they can also do that, because this is a thing that students have to submit when asking for payment, and hours do need to be completed within the academic year, so July 1st or June 30th. And students can only request payment once they've completed at least 150 semester or 100 quarter hours. And so I think with some of the things we saw in the Mentimeter today, there are also just some common challenges that students are facing as they're trying to benefit from the program. I think the first one, right, is it is only open to students who do have that unmet need in their financial aid package. It could be difficult to find service organizations for students, especially, if they're not connected to any, if they're just attending the campus for the first time. And there, again, as somebody mentioned, there is a need sometimes to complete background checks at service organizations for volunteers. As we also saw, the application and payment process can be a little bit confusing because of the different sections, the different people who need to fill out those sections. And students also do need to complete that certain number of hours that's listed here on the screen before receiving payment, which could be a challenge if they're having a hard time completing hours or anything like that too. And so our panelists are going to be getting into how to address some of these challenges, but I do also want to share this specific guide that's from the California Undocumented Higher Education Coalition that actually talks about background checks here in California and undocumented students. It talks about what is involved in those background checks and how undocumented students can navigate that process, or at least inform them enough on the process so they can make an informed decision on whether or not they should do the background check. This document isn't necessarily legal advice, it's just a little bit more guidance. And it does advise that if a student has a more complicated background, right, to kind of tap into legal providers, which are available at all of the 3 public systems, to kind of get advice on that a little bit more. So we threw that in the chat. And so I'm going to actually transition us to our panel right now.
Before we do that, Madeline, can I just jump in? I mean, I think that it's important to know that it is possible for individuals without Social Security numbers to get their background checked. And I think that the areas that Madeline mentioned that are areas for concern should definitely be considered. But I also think that many students don't move forward thinking that it's completely impossible. And this resource will really help you know that it is possible for many.
Yes, thank you, Nancy, for uplifting or highlighting that specifically, right? This resource is specific to California because it talks about the background checks from the California Department of Justice. But I have heard from different campuses who investigate a little bit more about the need for background checks for volunteers at their campus, and has even worked with their campus police, right, on how to set up protocols if they are doing background checks for undocumented students. So take a look at this guide a little bit more. But I do want us to transition to our panel at this point. To kind of talk a little bit about their experiences with DSIG at their campus, and just some of the ways how they've addressed the challenges maybe that were brought up this morning or was listed in the previous slide. I think as with any program that's new, right, or any work that really involves undocumented students, there is kind of like a lot of trying on process. And so I'm really grateful for our panelists today to kind of share the different ways they're kind of trying on these strategies to increase DSIG participation on their campuses. So they introduced themselves a little bit earlier, but I do want to just highlight them again. Maybe those folks can come on camera if they're not already on camera, and we can pin them. But we have Yuliana Vasquez, who is EOPS counselor with Monterey Peninsula College, Jairo Leon, who's a director, so feedback. Jairo Leon, who is the director of the Undocumented Student Success Center at CSU San Bernardino. And Ana Coria from UC Riverside, the director of the Undocumented Student Program. So I'm going to stop the screen. And I'll ask the first question, folks. We'll go kind of in the order that I read everybody's name out loud. And so the first question I have for folks is, how has your campus facilitated DSIG participation for your students? And this can include things like outreach activities, any cross-departmental collaborations you've done, or application support you've given to your students. So we'll go with Yuliana first.
Hi everyone. So how our campus started promoting the participation of DSAC was in the first year. Basically, we promoted the DSAC information in the Dreamers in Action orientations. So every semester we would have an orientation for new students and continuing students to share information about the resources on campus, and that's when we tagged in the information about the DSAC program. On our first year, basically, we had 18 eligible Cal Grant recipients, right? And then we, at that time, only 2 participants completed their full application. On our second year, we started using the testimonials of our students, and we started doing presentations at the high school, promoting it to the high schools and working with the counselors at the high schools for the students to meet the March 2nd deadline to be eligible for the COG grant. So we saw that the numbers continued to increase at that time, because on that year we had 22 COG grant eligible students, 12 apply, and we had a total of 10 participants. So we saw that the testimonials of the students was very helpful. But also what it really helped on the outreach and the collaboration was the completion of the DREAM Act, making sure that the students in high school would create the web grant for students, right? So when they were here, our URC would complete their affidavits, have their high school transcripts. So that allows us to work with our admissions and financial aid for them to be able to be already awarded by October. So that's how we started. And in the second year, we also collaborated and partnered with the workforce. So we had a work coordinator from NPC that had already been working with students and helping them to find internships. So what this coordinator basically did was to help us find placements in like departments. So some of the departments that she placed some of our students were like on the auto tech and skill labs, like the business department, the transfer. We also work with the transfer of success center at CSUMB to also have that bridge with the students that were transferring, to have that opportunity to, as they were transitioning to CSUMB, to have opportunities as peer mentors there. And we do have some students that are using now the work corps at CSUMB, but have also managed to build a relationship with other programs that have been able to take them in. So that's, I think that partnership and that collaboration has made a really big difference. And that time the work in the application was a little bit heavy, because that was housed in EOPS. We didn't have a coordinator, so right now we have a coordinator in our URC, partnering up with more resources on campus. This semester, we're working with the coordinator to for her to incorporate the internships work organization that she works off campus in the Monterey County to make them see if they're eligible to the. So she's submitting them to apply to be eligible as these SAC organizations. So she's going to be helping us with that. And I think also a little bit more, I think. Yeah, so I think it's just that collaboration. And we are now also working with that foundation and to see if our students are not eligible for DSAC, what are other types of funding that we could find students to be able to get a paid internship.
Yeah, thank you, Yuliana, for uplifting all of that, right? I think that just some quick highlights, right? Helping students complete California Dream Act is a big kind of like necessary step to make sure students are able to qualify for DSIG, right? Because it only is open to California Dream Act applicants who are getting those awards we named earlier. So even just taking the extra step to make sure that high school students who are incoming, prospective students, right, who are incoming to your campus are aware of the opportunity can help with that as well. And then I really like how you have also partnered up with like workforce development on your campus who do have access to those different departments, places that students can do their volunteer to help with the placement, as that's one of the challenges that students are facing, and even kind of continuing to build relationships and inviting partners from your community to be part of these qualifying service organizations have also helped open that up for students. So thank you for sharing that. And then we'll go next to Jairo to answer the same question about how you help students, help students participate in this on your campus.
Awesome, awesome. Well, good to see everyone. I always enjoy spaces like this, so thank you, Madeline and Nancy, for bringing us all together. I love connecting with people who understand the work that I do. And I feel like the people in this room are exactly those folks who understand the challenges and the workarounds. And so I'm glad that we're featuring DSIG today. One question for the group is this. When an undocumented student comes into your office, no work authorization, and tells you that they want to work on campus, what do you tell them? When you meet with a student and they say they need additional financial aid beyond the California Dream Act, what is your response? As you think about these scenarios, which I know that each of you encounter, I want you to think about DSIG because it is an amazing tool which would allow you to respond and say, you know what, you can work on campus, and you can do professional development opportunities. Let me tell you about this amazing program. Now, I know there's criteria that students have to meet. It's not a solution for everybody, but it's an amazing tool that has not been available to us before. So I'm really excited about this. So thank you to our CSAC partners. Shout out to Amy, who has just been an outstanding partner. Let me share my screen fairly quickly, just so I can maybe just visualize for you what the first year of implementation has looked like at Cal State San Bernardino. I believe you can see the screen. Awesome. Thank you, Madeline.
Is it possible to make it a full screen? I think it's a little small. Or bigger screen? Yeah.
Let's see. Come on, technology. It might be as good as it gets.
Yeah, this looks better. Thank you.
Go ahead, we're fine.
Did he drop off? Is he still here? Oh, yeah, you are. Jairo, I think you got muted. Or we lost sound.
Hi, Madeline.
There it is. Okay.
All right, thank you. So can you see me, hear me, and can you see the screen?
We can see and hear you, but we cannot see the screen anymore.
Got it.
But maybe in the interest of time, Jairo, you could just tell us what's on the screen?
Fabulous. Thank you, Nancy. So this is the second year that CSUSB has been able to implement our DSIG program while I have been here. Last year was extremely successful. We had 36 departments supporting 80 students through this program. In total, we were able to direct $360,000 of additional financial aid and assistance that went directly into the pockets of our students. I'm really proud of this effort and the way the first year went. I think there were some things that we did that really helped us get to this point, but there were also some challenges and hurdles. So Madeline, to your question, what did we do? I would highlight a few things. The number one of them being our center, the Undocumented Student Success Center, owned the administrative portion of our DSIG implementation. One of the challenges with DSIG is the multiple forms, multiple steps, and a lot of the administrative work that isn't really assigned to anybody. Is the student supposed to find their organization? Is the student supposed to find out if their Cal Grant be eligible? Is the student supposed to get multiple signatures from folks? Or is this the responsibility of us as practitioners? Or does it fall in the financial aid office? Or does it fall in CSAC? Right? There's this a little bit of a gray area. At San Bernardino, we decided that we would take it on. And so I informed myself of the program. I became the certified signing official for all of our students. And I matched them with departments on campus that they could do research-based work with, primarily. There was some work that went outside of that slightly, but it was primarily research-based activities. And so that was our approach to it, always in conversation with our financial aid partners. Financial aid is my number one partner. I know I have them on teams and I'm always in constant communication with them. So what does that mean? It means I spoke with them about owning the administrative portion of it, at least when it came to my outreach efforts. It means that I communicated to them my proposed timeline of when we would do the outreach, enroll students, do onboarding for students and departments, close out the process, request payment. All of that timeline was shared with our financial aid partners, got their approval, got their thought partnership on it as well. So I'll stop there. I know that there's a few more questions coming up as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jairo, for even just presenting that scenario in the beginning and really highlighting the importance of kind of like clarity on the administrative process. We didn't get too deep into it, right? But we saw that DSIG has multiple parts. Students sometimes are not the best at, as we know, right? Not the best at giving completing forms, on following up on different things. And so kind of having the Undocumented Student Center own that process, I think, has been really helpful in addressing some of the challenges that we named. And I like that you really highlighted working closely with financial aid, because they own the payment process part technically that has to go through them. And so working in collaboration with them from the outreach portion to even the payment is a really great thing to uplift for this group too, as folks are kind of getting DSIG up on their campus or improving it. So thank you for highlighting that. So we'll go next with Anna for the same question, right? How have you kind of helped students participate in DSIG at your campus?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So for our program, it's going to start with last year. We had a participation about 50 undocumented students in DSIG. And so we kind of did two ways of outreaching. So first one's kind of like the marketing, the media. We created a website. We have a quick like 20-minute like recording on explaining to students what the eligibility is, the process. That was not successful. The part that was successful that we saw was we have had a program for the past 7 years called the Butterfly Project. And it's a professional development program for undocumented students where we place them in an internship site on campus for 1 quarter. And so what we were doing is that when our students were finishing their program, we were letting them know, hey, you can continue in your site even though it's 1 quarter because you qualify for DSIG. And so then we were helping the students enroll into DSIG. We were helping the departments understand what DSIG is and making sure they understood like you have no financial liability for your student continuing. So at the end of the year, when we saw like we had 50 students enrolled and we were looking at who was enrolled, we were seeing most of our numbers are, actually all of our numbers were Butterfly Project students continuing. So with that, we took time in the summer to work with the Career Center and financial aid and really figuring out like where were the challenges our students are having. And it really made it clear to us that our students are first generation, and when it comes to career professional development, they need the wraparound holistic services. It's not enough to be like, here's the program, go find your site, and here are the steps. And so we really took that to kind of revamp our program this year, where it's a year long now. So DSIG allowed us to increase the number of students we allow into the Butterfly Project and also increase the amount. Some of the challenges that we also identified with the students, because we did ask the students that participated, what are some challenges? Some of those challenges were, well, I can't wait for my funding until the end of the quarter because I have rent. So our students this quarter they do 150 hours a quarter instead of 100, but we pay them the additional 50 hours they have to do ahead of time. So that kind of helped alleviate that. And then we train the mentors. So students, when they have a site, they're guaranteed 150 hours. So they're not in that situation where if I get only 80, I don't get compensation. So we really, again, having to partner with the financial aid to streamline that process. Students get a Microsoft form link, and that automatically generates a DocuSign where it goes to the student to fill out. It goes to financial aid, and then it goes to me to fill out. So the student doesn't have to be going through different departments and waiting for people to sign the forms and then going to someone else. So that has really been able to help support students in understanding that process.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for naming that. There's a couple of questions already coming up in the chat. I'll give you a second to read some of those things too. But yeah, so it does kind of sound like, right, as Anna highlighted, that DSIG kind of took a existing fellowship program already, professional development program on your campus, kind of to the next level, but echoing a lot of the strategies already shared by our previous panelists, right, with the challenges of completing application and finding service organizations and making sure students complete their hours in the first place. You also did a lot of kind of like informing departments, like kind of activating departments on campus to be those service providers where students can do these hours. It sounds like your office in collaboration with other offices like Financial Aid, Career Center, really took on and owned the administrative part of the application as well, similar to what Jairo mentioned. I think also what came up for Yuliana, and that there was also already some kind of like extra resources you also all had to help meet kind of the concern around I can't wait until the end of the semester to get my grant for this too, right? That not all campuses may be able to provide, right? But I think I really like the point of kind of like informing the placements of these students that to make sure that they're kind of guaranteed the 150 hours that they need in order to complete their DSIG hours, basically. Let me just kind of look to some of these questions here. And I think a similar question that we actually, a next question that we actually had that I'll probably pose back in the same order that we had before is I think folks kind of talked a little bit about how they they support students in finding service organizations. But I guess how are people kind of helping, students complete the 150 hours that they have to finish in order to get payment, or how are they kind of like informing service organizations that students are going to be placed with? So I'll turn it back maybe to Yuliana, and then we'll go in the same order that we went on.
So I think for us completing the hours hasn't been a big problem, right? Students were as peer mentors working at the university with us. We also have what is called a center, right? So we had a lot of events, right? So the students will also help with the matriculation and outreach. So students were going out to do presentations with the outreach team. They were participating in workshops. They were doing hours, doing phone calls. So it was, something that we will work. Okay, student has 2 hours between their classes, right? So they'll go and then come back. So a lot of their hours were completed on the participations of events, right? We have a summer bridge. It's a 2-week summer bridge. So a lot of the students would all use a lot of their hours, because a lot of the students were working like 20 hours a week through that project, working with first incoming students. So a lot of the students we were very flexible on the time that they could make their hours. So most of our students completed their hours on time. And when it comes to the organizations that they were helping to, our coordinator basically sets an amount of hours through the semester to see if it's ideal for the student to complete those hours, right? So that was even more helpful for us, because it allowed the student to plan ahead with their schedule, to be able to, if they had other jobs, how to, prioritize on that. But that was one of the things that we always share with the students, right? That we would always find a way to work around those hours.
Thank you. Thank you. Jairo, would you like something to add to this part?
Maybe 2 points. Students were very intimidated by the 300 hours. They felt that they may not be able to complete these, and so they were nervous to sign up for the program when they saw that requirement. So part of our process was addressing that and communicating to them like what a structured approach we were offering them to help them complete those 300 hours on the student side. With regard to our departments, we offer different templates of what those 300 hours could look like. So what are some examples of those research-based activities? What would align well with their academic departments? And also if they were on the student affairs side or on the advancement side, which some of them were, what would research look like within those offices? Because I really emphasize that. I feel like, being involved in research is really powerful to foster the scholar identity of our students. And so I really push for that in our program.
Yeah, thank you, Jairo. Right. So again, it's not just the informing the students, but how do you make it as easy as possible for the departments who are also hosting those students? So I really like your practice of providing these templates for how to fill these hours for departments, because I think I also have heard from different folks that challenges that they face with these organizations is that these organizations don't want to take any more interns because it's extra work for them too, right? And so how can that also be kind of like alleviated by some of the work you are doing to in helping prepare those organizations to take on these DSIG volunteers? We'll go to Anna next to address this too.
So yeah, completing the hours, it hasn't been a challenge. And I think that's because of the structure and expectations set in the beginning, both with the students and their mentor/host sites. So both parties have to sign what we call a service learning agreement. And so it has outcomes of like the projects they'll focus on, but there's also expectations on how hours are going to be completed. Our students also participate in professional development conferences, and their fall quarter one focuses on like resume interviewing, but also time management. So we really stress with students the importance of time management. If students do fall behind a bit, which doesn't happen often, some departments have additional volunteer events that they need extra support. And so we will communicate that to students. If you need to make up hours, there's another event that you can participate with the permission of your mentor on your site. So I think the clear expectations in the beginning make it easier, especially since students know that their mentor will provide the hours they need, as long as they stay committed to what they agreed to.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that too. Right. So again, I think informing also the departments where the organizations department that these students are placed at of the expectations as well, kind of helps make sure that those 150 hours needed for the semester or quarter is actually met by the students. Yuliana?
Also too, when incoming students are coming in, we are also providing them like training, right? Like a FERPA training, financial aid training, application, CSU application. So those hours, because they're in training, that's another way of getting hours ahead for them to be able to count towards their hours.
Right. Thank you for adding that additional context. I'm also kind of, so as we also saw earlier, right, from our Mentimeter, there are a lot of folks here who are kind of still learning how to get DSIG going, how to kind of like build the program up a little bit on their campus. And so I'm gonna kind of spotlight actually all of our panelists right now. But the next question I just have for everybody, and anybody can go first with this one, is kind of like, what advice do you have for campuses to just kind of like get started with DSIG, right? Or to kind of like make it a bigger program for their students on their own campus? And we can go in the same order that we did, actually. Maybe that's been working out for everybody. Yeah.
So we're talking about the advice, right, to the
Yes.
other campus. I would definitely really would recommend them to understand the financial aid piece, because that was one of the things that took the most time for me to understand the financial aid piece, because we were promoting this information, but not all students were eligible. So just understanding, like the deadlines, and then that once the student is eligible, bringing them into orientations. I have heard from other community colleges they were doing already orientations, but then the students were not eligible. So that was a little bit of like feedback that I got from other colleagues, that was like, make sure the financial piece is, and you understand, right? The second part is like coming into terms with financial aid, right? Our financial aid decided that we take on the financial aid piece. They will just sign the paper, track, like the payment and everything. But they, agree that it will stay under our program, that URC, with the paperwork. So that was, in the conversations, with, the admissions as well, having that AB 540 already clear. So I think that that's the component, the financial aid, admissions, and how the DREAM Act works. It really helps to understand. And then when you're looking for partners, that they also understand, right? But I think that this is not something that you could work on your own, to be honest. Having the buy-in, for our VP of Student Services, our dean, our coordinator was like the best thing, because it was like they let us run with it, but we needed to be strategic on what we were doing, right? So I think that when you put a team together, that each person takes on the responsibility, right? It doesn't just have to fall on a coordinator, right? There's a lot of pieces that could be delivered, to different persons. And then also the communication with the student, that they stay on top, right? Like, you're submitting this form, the reason why you're submitting this form, you need to do the follow-up, right? Just at first I was doing the whole application, and the students, oh, I don't know if I did this, but, and I was like, okay, this is the step one, step two, like having a cheat sheet for the student. Complete this step. your application is on this step. And we have a lot of tracking. Our tracking system and on our drive too shows student submit application, student needs to submit payment. So the other person knows that that's where the student is. So if I'm not here, the coordinator or the, whoever comes in, they're gonna know the process. So just leveraging on that part. And but most important, understanding that this is essential for undocumented students. Knowing the fact that they could get professional development that's going to help them to grow in their careers, lift their lift their spirit. It's like the best reward that as professionals we could get. Because I love getting texts from my students saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this internship, or so and so is going to give me this fellowship." So to me, that's, even though it's a lot of work, at the end it compensates, because I know that that's what my goal was, to make the student a success, and that they could pay it forward to other students.
Thank you, Yuliana. Jairo?
Yuliana, oh, awesome. Kudos to everything you said. Especially the last point about this being essential. In preparation for this conversation, I was thinking about that piece. So I have a confession to make. I've been in my position for 2 years as director of our center, and there are still academic and university departments who I've been wanting to talk to, and I just have not met with yet. Because there are everyday tasks that have taken up my time. Well, basically, because there's limited amount of time and there's things that we need to prioritize. But DSIG is one of those that I have not let drop from my list. I would say, aside from like helping our students complete their California Dream Act and staying focused on financial aid support, DSIG is right up there in terms of my priorities. Because we know the majority of our students don't have work authorization. This is not a perfect solution, but it is a really, really big step forward when we think about educational access and success, regardless of immigration status. So as you think about this program, I know we're all at different levels of capacity within our programs and offices. So you have to massage it and see what feels right within your campus. But I would say prioritize it. And then more specifically, I would say to reach out to CSAC. Amy Eberhard is on this call. Her and her team are leading this program from the CSAC side. They're incredible partners. They're happy to jump on a call with you. Sorry, Amy, if I'm throwing more meetings into your calendar here. But they're an awesome team. Communicate with your financial aid offices, with your academic department folks. Yes, people are booked, staff and faculty. But when you tell them the reason why you're reaching out to them, the way that they can help get some money into our undocumented students' pockets, everybody will make time. It is rare the person that says, I can't make time for this. Faculty want to support, they just don't know how. And so I think if you can help them, it'll be a win-win for everybody.
Thank you.
I'm also excited to share some quotes from students, so I'll save those.
Yeah, thank you, Jairo. Anna?
Yeah. So my advice would be to really work with your financial aid and career center. Undocu centers cannot do all that work. Financial aid is really kind of streamlining the process, so students are not navigating of like who fills out that form. So again, for our campus, it was having a Microsoft form that students fill out, and then it automatically routes a DocuSign for folks to sign, both for the application and their payment request. And then also them being able to address issues that happen with if a student maxes out their unmet need. So really working financial aid of like, okay, how are you going to handle these challenges? Who in your office is responsible for these? And then with the career services, it's really about trying to outreach for departments. So I know in our campus, I had a challenge finding sites that were STEM based, But the Career Center really helped in finding science research labs and other science areas so I can place students there, because they get requests from departments. Departments will be, we don't have money to hire students. Do you have work study? And Career Center can be, we don't have work study, but there's this awesome program that you might want to know more about. And then our area too is knowing what challenges departments have and how we take care of that. So I know someone's talked about background checks and onboarding. For our campus, it's a policy that volunteers have to be onboarded. So we do the onboarding for all DSIG students. So departments have no reason to not take an intern, being like, oh, this is too much work. So we just onboard them as a collective. So really working with all those 3 departments to figure out what are the challenges and who's going to be responsible for what challenges.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So I think also lots of similar things shared by everybody, right? I think most importantly, the undocumented student program center cannot unfortunately hold all of this, right? But it can kind of take a lot of the lead in developing these relationships with partners like financial aid, workforce development, career centers, faculty, even to help with a lot of the placements, and to help set that expectation so that departments are also helping students complete the hours that they need, and taking on a lot of those administrative sides, the administrative processes for it. And I was trying to also read the same chat at the same time that people aren't talking. But I know there's a lot more questions that folks kind of have around this, but it is really requiring like collaborative cross-departmental efforts at campuses. And for a lot of our community partners, CBOs, who's in the organization, who's in the call with us today, I think I would also ask folks to kind of think about local colleges in their region to let them know to like, hey, we can sign up to be a DSIG organization. We can take DSIG volunteers to help with some of the placements and the mentoring of their students. I know there's a question in the chat around how long it takes for service organizations to get kind of verified, and I think it's a pretty short timeline. So again, also encourage folks who are from like community organizations to look into that too. And our panelists shared a lot of different great ideas today. There's a lot more questions in the chat that I will not address now, but I'm taking note of them too. I don't think we have time for the final question. I know, Jairo, you had some student testimonials. Yuliana talked about student testimonials, so maybe you all can kind of just share that with me as follow-up for our email for every registrant today. But I really want to thank you all for just sharing all these great strategies. I think everything is always a work in progress when working with undocumented students, but you all showed that, with dedication, with cross-campus collaborations, with a lot of kind of like naming the process, that it can be like something like this can be a smooth and really, really beneficial program for our undocumented students. And so I'll also ask the audience to kind of give some appreciations to our panelists. We'll take note of all the questions and kind of send up any additional follow-up materials, especially a lot of the ones that our panelists talk about, to our registrants today. And so I think I do want to give us maybe just like about 6 minutes or so to go into breakout groups. Thank you to our panelists. If you can stick around, maybe somebody will be paired with you in a breakout room if they have additional questions. But just some breakout rooms for folks to kind of like marinate on some of the information that was shared with us today. We have some questions here for you that we'll throw in the chat, but just basically like what practices most resonated with you from the panel or from the presentation earlier? What are some opportunities on your campus that you can see around improving DSIG participation? And is there anything you heard today that you can take back to your campus too? So we'll take just like maybe 5 minutes to think about some of those questions. And I think we're ready to open up those breakout rooms now, Nancy.
think the harder hurdle, oh, it's okay, is getting the students to complete those hours. And if I could just add also, like, something that I started implementing this academic year is sending students that are accepted a quarterly newsletter. So I try to do my part in also motivating the students to complete their hours. So I think I have Q3 newsletters scheduled to go out in March, and that one's basically just reminding the students, hey, you know, you're almost done. Make sure you complete your hours. You have until June 30th of 2024 to complete your hours, and kind of more informational. So hopefully that encourages more students to continue towards their hours.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. And I know I cut you off with the recording, but just for the sake of it being recorded also right now, I know you did say that you all do not over award. So folks who are applying, right, as long as they complete the hours, are able to, should be getting that, should be getting the grant at the end too. So I think it's also just making sure that students are completing the hours, and that service organizations also know to provide those hours for students.
Can I just clarify quickly on that, Madeline and Amy? Basically, the way I understand that, it means if a student turns in an application, they will be able to receive their hours, because you would not accept more than 1,600 and whatever the number was, 77 that you gave. Is that kind of, if they put in the application and they do their part, they should be receiving the hours?
Yes, so that $4,500 is allotted to them as long as their unmet need allows.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I would also just encourage people to be thinking about working with their financial aid office. If there is not room in their financial aid package, how could they maybe work with their financial aid office to see if their budget could be increased to allow that to come in? And also, in many cases, I think that's not a problem at a lot of the different colleges and universities, because most students do not have a full financial aid package.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take maybe one last comment question before we start to close out. Okay, if not, that's okay. I am hoping that people are leaving with ideas, questions, maybe things to explore beyond this meeting. I know there is a lot of chat questions we did not get to, but we are recording the chat, or like keeping tabs of the chat. And I think, and folks from CSAC here are also aware of those questions. So we'll kind of touch base with folks again about those. And this is actually, I think, the third time we have done a DSIG presentation. So this has been a regular. So hopefully every time we share a little bit more new information. And also just another gratitude for our panelists for being kind of like trailblazers with DSIG on each of their campuses, and hopefully inspiring a lot of you to kind of take on some of these practices for your students. Just some final slides I want to share before we close out. We do have additional, I do just want to highlight some additional DSIG resources that is on CSAC's website, including their social media toolkit and FAQ for students, and this very good program overview webinar that goes into the details of the application and payment process to learn a little bit more about it. I stuck the DSIG contact information in the email. Amy, I'm not sure if you share your email with people, or if that's something that you can throw in the chat in case folks have additional questions we didn't get to cover today, or just so they have a contact with DSIG. And then I do want to promote our next roundtable for March. We're going to be talking about building towards AB 540 eligibility and focusing on the Community College Educational Code 76140, which kind of helps students build attendance requirements to become AB 540 on their campus. Registration for that is listed here on the screen, and we'll send that out to folks who came through today. And if you are not signed up yet for my digest and want to keep updated with all of our events and resources, please do that. I send this out every couple of weeks. You can email me to be added to our listserv. It does go out through MailChimp, so make sure you just have me as a contact so that you can receive the digest. And lastly, throwing in the contact information of all our panelists. We all really learn from each other. We all sometimes need examples of how to do this on our campus. So please reach out for them for support. Again, thank you so much to Yuliana, Jairo, Anna for sharing everything that they did. And also we are at Immigrants Rising are available for you if you have additional questions too, or concerns, or just want to share a really great practice to highlight in the future. You can catch us at the emails listed here on the screen. So I'll wrap us up there. I went a little bit over, but thank you all for joining us today, and hope that everybody has a really warm and sunny rest of your day. Nobody is suffering from any more rain here in California. And we'll see you all next month.
Thanks, everyone. So glad that you're here. Thanks to CSAC for being here to help support. Appreciation for our panelists.